All right. I'm coming. So good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Let me segue over to this and we'll get rocking tonight. So hope everyone's doing great this evening. It's been a super interesting day. Obviously, we had the Bitcoin conference, President Trump making a few different statements out there, followed by Senator Loomis. So I think it's a real exciting time for the crypto space. But before we get into some of those different elements, I do want to acknowledge one of my number one supporters. Hey, Damien, thanks for tuning in so quick. Jay, good to see you. So let's get talking to a handful of topics. I'm going to do a couple different streams tonight. I'm going to keep this one a little bit more the informational stream, and then I'm going to take like a 15-minute break. I'll come back and spin up a separate session, most likely on, well, I might simultaneously broadcast to all platforms, but I'll actually show some people a fresh boot up of the Illuvium game. I did create an alternate character just to quickly test fire some stuff on there, but I'll do a run through on that. So I know there are a lot of Illuvium holders in the community through Moon Gang, through the DRT, and some of the other affiliations I have. So, hey, why don't you see what you're actually investing in the grand scheme of things? Anyway, let me present my screen here, and we'll talk through a few interesting things that we got going on out in the markets as far as the weekend, some of the weekend news, and the like. So let me share my screen out here. So I'm going to start with this one. I periodically like to look at the total liquidity on some of this stuff. And you can see here, we're floating at around 21 and let's say like 21 trillion, a little over 21 trillion. For the M2 money supply. So that is for the US M2 money supply. This is not global liquidity. I'll pull that up as I look at a few other charts on that front. But what we got going on here is if we're sitting at around 21 trill and some change right now, when was the last time we were kind of in this band? Well, if you actually look at it, and we're kind of expanding out over to here, last time we were around this kind of zone was around late March 2023. And then obviously we had all-time highs so far as total net liquidity coming out of the end of 21. A little bit of a lag you can see on here as the total pump, and they started pulling some liquidity from the market. Prior to that, peak liquidity was around September 21, which slightly precedes that second pump we had in late 21 for Bitcoin and the altcoin market. So you can see we ran up, came sliding back down, kind of bottomed out at around this 20 trill mark. Never really went below it, which I thought was really, really interesting, at least for the North American market. And you can see directionally we've been changing since late February and just kind of grinding back up on that front. So that is the total M2 liquidity situation on that front. So obviously today was the big keynote address for President Trump over at the Bitcoin conference. I think a lot of us were tuning in on that front, and he used the magic words many of us were waiting for. And shout out to RFK, who had mentioned it the other night, but I think a lot of people were just tuning in exclusively to see what Trump had going on. Trump used our favorite word, strategic reserve, on that. And he also mentioned that he does not want to sell any of the Bitcoin that we're currently holding, bringing back an increasing energy supply, and doing a whole bunch more mining. And then shortly after he left the stage, and Trump does what Trump does. I've had the opportunity to see Trump speak live. If you ever get the chance, I encourage you to go. It's actually a pretty good, nice group of people I find overall, pretty entertaining. And he has a tendency to go on and off script and weave things throughout his speeches and the like. And he's very improvisational. I know some folks may not like that, and some folks kind of want like this very regimented thing. Other folks to appreciate how he meanders about. He does a very good job of reading the room. I think one of the things I took away watching Trump in the 2016 and 2020 elections, he's very good at sucking the air out of the room and dragging people into the fights he wants to fight conversationally and the topics he wants to address, be it through, quite frankly, name calling or like little jabs or whatever. He's not a polished politician in that front. It's one of the things I actually find quite endearing. Anyway, so big conversations today at the Bitcoin conference on that front. Senator Loomis took the stage, speaking of meandering, shortly after Trump and mentioned, hey, strategic reserve bill being filed. They want to go for 5%, roughly 1 million of the total Bitcoin supply over the next several years, not to be sold for the next 20 years. So I think that's going to have a lot of chatter on that front. As far as the other aspects of that, I know folks had some different opinions on aspects of Trump's speech. I would love to see what their metrics were as far as viewership, but I am thinking, this is just me speculating, and we'll see numbers and more information come out in the coming days. Obviously, it's a weekend. We got the news. We'll see some of the effect of this. I think really see the effect on the markets Monday morning. I was watching the 1 minute chart in the background while watching Trump's stream, and you could see it like dipping, dipping, dipping. Oh, Trump is talking about Bitcoin, crypto, fire Gensler, numbers go up. And Trump meanders over to electricity and Israel and international politics, numbers go down, and strategic reserve and numbers go up. So it was really interesting seeing that in the minute by minute chart in the background on that one. But two things I think we can take away here, and let me do this real quick. Number one is he's going to put Bitcoin in front of like millions of MAGA individuals. Let's argue half the country maybe who weren't really paying attention to it previously, right? So it's like we're like, what, 330-ish million, I think, in North America. I think everyone's probably conversationally heard of Bitcoin, but to sit there and effectively rally his half of the political sphere side of things would be to drive that forward. And what's that, like 165 million? We know the crypto voting block is probably around 50 million. And I think most of those stats are really coming from Coinbase, quite frankly. But to sit there and basically ramp it up and say, hey, my half of the aisle, so to speak, at around 165 million, he's got that in front of a lot of eyes and ears now. And really, I think in a lot of ways, it legitimizes Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, blockchain solutions, and like above and beyond a level that people might have considered it previously. Aside from like, yeah, I'm in it for the tech and mad gains on that front. Number two is I think it really highlights that it's not the U.S. that is anti-crypto. I think he's doing a really good job of framing and his constituency and a lot of the crypto individuals are really framing it as an anti-democratic position. It's really the Democrats that are against crypto. I'm not saying all Democrats are against crypto, but for the political conversation for this year's election, I think they're doing a good job of framing it up in that fashion. And also wanting to bring the U.S. to be a bit more pro-freedom. Speaking of the Democratic Party, this one kind of made me laugh. Democrats are pushing the Harris campaign for a reset on the crypto stance. So I know there was a lot of chatter earlier in the week about whether or not Kamala would be at the Bitcoin conference. It looked like there were some conversations that were going to come through. I know she had reached out, or her campaign had reached out to Mark Cuban. I'm sure it became very apparent that they're well behind the curve as far as crypto and blockchain and like, whereas Trump certainly has Vivek and JD Vance on his side of the aisle to quickly bring him up to speed, feed him some good talking points, and assist with aspects of his speech on that front. And let me highlight a few other folks rolling through. We got Moonpill. What's going on, man? Art. I'm going to use those crypto games for some privates, brother. Got to keep my hands safe. But yeah. Well, that's going to happen. Like after this weekend's announcement, man. Hopefully, we're all going to the moon right quick. Let's see here. To Maxim, hey, what's going on? Coming through the Twitter side of the house. Yes, I will talk a little bit about Illuvium and some of the economics surrounding that and some of the chatter I'm seeing on that front. And I'm going to have a separate stream a little later tonight where I'm actually going to do a fresh playthrough of the games, like starting from zero and getting into some level of not quite hero shape on that front. Let's see. Damien, he said, Bitcoin will surpass the market cap of gold. Yes, he did. And Jay, highlighting out that M2 inching up with no printing is good. Yes, probably means they're finding ways to secure some more assets and maybe tailoring or stripping back some of the reverse repos and the like. Dems reaching out with no boots on the ground does jack shit. Yeah, so basically, again, highlighting, I think, the ability of the Trump and the campaign to kind of suck the air out of the room on a lot of fronts. Global liquidity is expected to top around late 2025. Hold on to that thought, Damien. We're going to come back to that one. And rip to Uncle Peter, man. That dude, Peter Schiff is to Bitcoin what Mike O'Hearn is to being natty. I think Schiff rides that one into the grave. Anyway, all right. So let me pull up some of the other stuff we got going on here. Let's see. So when you really want to look at some chart wizards, I encourage you to go check out folks like my buddy Crypto Boogie, Agent J, Zenith, and some of the other DRT guys. But occasionally I do like to look at some charts and look at some different elements here. So what we got here today is the weekly on the Bitcoin US dollar chart. On this one, I marked off some halvings and cleaned this up because it was just getting way too cluttered. Side note, one of the things I did as far as my own kind of future best practices is I've started labeling certain trend lines on my graphs so I can remember when the hell I drew the damn thing. Because I was sitting there going, man, when did I draw this trend line? Why did I draw it? And like, whereas, hey, may as well leave some comments on it. Anyway, along those lines, in this particular one, looking at the Bitcoin US dollar one, I was kind of eyeballing some stuff here. And let me just kind of quickly do a few other quick frame ups here. So if we look at roughly the halvings to the peak, and okay, I'm not going to super drill into this. Let's just keep it kind of flowing and conversational relative to certain peaks. I'm going to go with this peak here. You can see we went up, let's say around 10,000-ish. Plus minus. I'm sure if I drill it in slightly more on this, it'll be a little bit more accurate, but let's just conversationally call it 10,000% and some change over the span of maybe, what's that, like 371 odd days, give or take, in that range. We'll call it like 378 on that one. So what I'm kind of looking for is just like kind of quickly fish out some rough patterns in there based on time intervals. I know it's not the only guiding light. Certainly we want to look at things like time, price, momentum, trend, and like, but I do sometimes like to look at the time aspect of it just to see if we see any underlying patterns in there. We got 3,500% and some change from that halving. And then for this one here, we had around a 600 odd percent on this. So what I'm quickly eyeballing this is we're losing, what are we going to call this? Let's call that, if we call that around 10, let me just kind of make that around 10,000, 13,000. Let's say we're going down by roughly a quarter every single time. It's probably not necessarily 600%. Let me see. Second peak I thought was a little higher on that front. We'll call it by a factor of 4, right? On that. So basically coming in at 1/4 of the kind of prior run for just some quick, loose and dirty numbers on that front. So a quarter of 615%, just for conversation's sake, that would probably put us at like what, 100 something percent and some change on that one. Roughly from the point of the halving on upward. So if we kind of are going with that 100 odd percent, that probably puts us in the realm of around, let's say we got 500 something days, 385 days. Let's call it quickly 400-ish and some change days on there. And around 115%. So maybe $1.50, kind of looking at certain patterns in by end of October August to October. So let's say mid to late next year. Again, this is not going to be picture perfect math, but I do like to look at some things in different fashions to go, okay, what are certain percentage gains? What are certain time intervals? So in these particular, on the purple bars up top, you can see I'm roughly taking from what the prior cycle all-time high was to number of days or weeks it took us to break the prior all-time high. On that front. And so if we kind of took out the average of those patterns with that late second top we had in 21, if that time interval stays roughly the same, then that is potentially coming in October 2024, which would be late this year. So I don't think it's going to be that early on that front. I do anticipate it being later, especially in light of today's announcements and statements being made. Who knows? Maybe this time it is different. Maybe it is, dare we say, a super cycle. I'm not going to stick with that one, but it is interesting to contemplate, certainly as things heat up in the market and I am entering or exiting certain positions. I've been fairly transparent about my holdings. I will talk about a new holding I recently added to my stack this week. But I'll be talking about, hey, I'm getting ready to take some profits. Certainly that's going to be super personal based on your own targets, goals, timing, price points, all those different elements on there. All right. So that was a little bit on some of the different Bitcoin aspects. One of the other ones I've highlighted here before is shout out to Tech Dev. I swiped this one from him as far as the idea. This is the Bitcoin 4-week chart, not monthly, but 4 weeks, because different months have different intervals surrounding them. And this channel on a 4-week RSI on the 4-week chart coincides mighty nicely with the major tops in the market on that. So food for thought on that one. You might want to snag that one. Again, it's just a Bitcoin 4-week chart on that front. And if you run the channel on the RSI, you will see that those peaks coincide with the top. So shout out to Tech Dev on that one. I want to come back to that loose framework I had for some of these percentage gains and the like. So one of the other things that I was kind of eyeballing was based on today's conversation, the Bitcoin dominance. It's sitting at around 56.68% at time of stream. You can see it's just been kind of steadily grinding upward. Very intriguing. We'll see kind of how that plays out. I also like to eyeball global net liquidity. So this is stuff for like the European Central Bank, Bank of Japan, the US Bank, and a bunch of other different banks. And what it does, it factors in reverse repo and other adjustments that they make. So it is called global net liquidity. If you're looking for the indicator, you can look up the indicators on TradingView. It is by Dharma Tech. That is DHARMATECH, Dharma Tech Global Net Liquidity. I've added this to one of my standard templates on it. It's just kind of like to eyeball some stuff because I was kind of curious to see what global net liquidity looks like versus the M2 aspect of it. And let me move this one. Let me expand this slightly. So you can see we've got the US Federal Reserve here tracing along, kind of flattening out. Again, there's some, let me make that a little more curved. That is just relative to scales on this front. And you see global net liquidity. So in this particular case, global net liquidity trending downward slightly while the Fed is trending upward slightly. So something we'll definitely keep paying attention to as we move forward. And Jay Collins saying, hey, late 2025 top would be a wonderful coincidence. You know what, man? Yeah, every time the 4-year cycle is different and every time it's not. But who knows? I'm certainly open to alternative ideas. And we got Justice Washington rolling through. ILV was down 11% today. It's a good day to DCA. Yes, sir. I continue to DCA because it's something I do believe in Kieran and team on the game. I've played the game a little bit on like a quick temporary account just to test it out. And it's definitely improved over the beta. Again, I'll run a separate stream here a little later tonight and actually demo the game a little bit further. All right. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about as well was the Illuvium game having launched and gone to production. So super cool. Shout out to Kieran and the guys and gals on the Illuvium team. That's coming along great. The gameplay is great. Mechanics feel good on that one. However, they have been met with a little bit of criticism, which is understandable. So in positive news, it's in the top 50 games on the Epic Game Store. I think it's like ranked number 40, 42 right now. And that's going to be somewhat fluid based on players coming on in and out, how many concurrent players they have on that front. Where they are taking a little bit of criticism right now is on the fuel costs on that. And so let me pull up the fuel page on this one and you can kind of see that. Now, why is fuel needed in the game? You need that to travel to some of the more challenging or elevated regions. Let me pull this up. And let me switch to... Cool. All right. So what we're looking at here is the fuel exchange, and currently to travel to some of the elevated levels for some of the initial zone for the production game, I believe right now the lower bound of it is 130 of this Krypton fuel, and that's running you about $1.09, and you do have to pay in Ethereum. On the upper edge, it's $13.50, I think, for the highest tier. So that's like $11 right now, just to instance into the zone, just to get to the zone 3 of that level. So they're definitely taking a little bit of flack on that front on there. However, Kieran did respond to that. And let me see if I've got his response over here. Yeah, he's talking about the fuel pricing situation. And so he was outlining here that the plan was to have 0 available a month before the main game launch to generate fuel, but it didn't quite work out that way. He is anticipating the price coming down based on the supply and demand mechanics. So the market should find a little bit more equilibrium where it's going to come down. As he states down here, though, if players aren't selling fuel, it's a sign the existing prices might be too high, for current demand. So sellers will need to reduce prices to make them more appealing, which will help balance the game's economy. So the plan was, though, for players in Illuvium 0 to have the opportunity to generate for about a month before the game. Yeah, Art thought you could earn fuel in Illuvium 0. So I don't hold any land. I haven't played 0 yet. I did play Overworld just to see, like, okay, how's the shooting, flight mechanics and the like. And the UIs are definitely a bit improved over the beta as well. So certainly as an ILV holder, we're looking for the game really to, one, catch some popular attention, and two, generate revenue, since that's a big part. I mean, they are a business at the end of the day. They want the game to be successful. In light of today's conversations, again, at the Bitcoin conference, one of the things I noticed, though, Trump was also saying Bitcoin in crypto, or using the word crypto. And I thought that was actually a really positive sign, in the sense that, more pro-liberty, pro-freedom, pro-digital asset side of things. So as far as some of the other stuff over here, this is the Illuvidex. You can kind of hop into this if you are a player and kind of eyeball some different stuff. I'll just kind of fly through it, and maybe we'll take a look at some examples a little later when I fire up my actual gaming stream. Right now, a lot of the lower level alluvials are at fractions of a cent. So one, it is somewhat time consuming to play. I will say that. I don't personally think I'm going to play the game a ton. It's not that it's bad. Actually, it's a really pretty game. The mechanics, the shooting feels pretty good. The movement feels pretty good. It's just really a time aspect of it. I would say if I am consider playing this game somewhat heavily, given that these things, especially the lower levels of alluvials, are fractions of a cent right now, I would strongly consider spending. I mean, look, it's like what was that? A millionth of a cent, a billionth of a cent. I'm not even going to bother doing the math. It's like a lot of zeros and a one. You could potentially take, $2, $20 and build yourself a really good starter deck of assorted alluvials to start grinding them up and leveling them up, versus needing to capture them, upgrade your gear, run around the map, shoot, zone in, zone out. If you do want to play this somewhat more aggressively or more competitively, again, I would strongly consider dropping a few real world dollars and just buying and building a quick team of some of these different archetypes. You'll have like your healers, your ranged characters, your tanks, your more roguelike characters, some hybrid characters. I haven't looked at the top end of that. Hell, I'm in here now and sharing. Let's take a look at what the upper end of things might be. Let's go with highest price. What is the highest price alluvial at the moment? Holy shit, 22 million. I'm thinking somebody's putting that in hopes that somebody fat fingers that, unless there's something ultra incredible about that one. I find that really hard to believe. I know Rampire is supposed to be one of the really rare alluvials. I do periodically eyeball some of the Twitter threads and just seeing what they got going on. So that's at 1.3 mil. Geyser, this dude whooped my ass whenever I ran in this character, and people running this character in the beta. On that, let's see here. This looks like this might be some sort of upgraded Doka or DACA with like assorted characteristics. Hell, let me click into one. All right, so it does have that hollow finish. Production number 135 and and so one of the things here is a lot of these will have different characteristics, since to the best of my knowledge, they're somewhat randomly instantiated or randomly created with different baseline characteristics. So that is the marketplace for the alluvials. Of course, if you want to continue to play, or you're looking at spinning up, again, time to spin up versus time to acquire and grind. Potentially you can build yourself a stronger deck. You can see that some of the upgraded equipment is, again, very cheaply priced. If you want to grind for materials and assets, hey, that's no harm, no foul. There is the opportunity to grind up and get some gear and get the materials to craft better gear and without needing to spend real world dollars. You're just going to exchange your time. Otherwise, maybe you want to go in and buy some of the upgraded equipment. Let's see what we got going on for upgraded equipment over here. And let's see, we got some folks selling the very basic gear at very high price points. Again, I am suspecting where some of these are actually really basic low-level equipment, just for all the dollars. People are just throwing it up and see what they can get to stick on it. That is some of the aspects of the marketplace. Let's take a look at Zero and find out what some of those lands are currently going for. It's thinking about stuff. I think I heard Kieran say last week on Charlie and DCC streams that tier 5 lands would be more November-ish time frame. Oh man, must be a little pricey a lot going on for some of the alluvial lands, or maybe the site's a little glitched out. It's thinking. Let me try coming back into it. Let's see what we got let's kind of reload it and see what we got going on. No, it must be pummeled. It must be pummeled on the lands. When I looked earlier this week, I would say the cheapest lands, since they're NFTs for the lands, we're going for about $500 a piece. That was tier 1. So let me see if I can maybe try to filter it down to tier 1 and force it to load a smaller data set. Must just be pummeled or something's going on with the application. So we'll take a look at that later during the actual game stream. Let me keep us moving. So final bit I wanted to talk about tonight was the Axe and DAO project. So I recently mentioned this over on Boogie's stream. It is a decentralized science project over here. They are building the future of DeSci. They recently launched their first project, which is relative to voice scans. I just want to be crystal clear with people. I'm not contributing biometric data. I am investing in the token with hopes of numbers go up on this particular one. So in this particular case, they're saying they got 19,500 holders and 5 projects under development. That first project in progress here is the A+ Voice project, which they recently launched, actually. And let me pull this up. It is scanning for conditions and trying to make heads or tails based on your voice prints and like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, PTSD, and Huntington's disease to start. So pretty interesting. That is potentially, aside from contributing your voice pattern, it is going to be, it's non-invasive, right? It's not like, and I work in bioinformatics for diagnostics medicine during my daytime grind for people on that one. And it's non-invasive, so there's no blood draw. There's no sample that has to be run down to a lab. Potentially, it's a voice pattern and integrated into other larger data sets and looking for that underlying pattern. So maybe you take a voice sample today. I mean, think about like boxers and MMA fighters, right? Like when they're fighting and they're 18 versus fighting at 28. And some of them have a very noticeable drop-off in speech just from like all the head trauma and just taking a beating, right? Like in other news, like the only way you get good at fighting is spending some time fighting. So wouldn't it be awesome if we can sit there and say, hey, we noticed like a 15% decline in your enunciation that correlates to like a 22% increase in early onset dementia or PTSD. Pretty awesome. I'd be very curious to see how this is going to work out for the longer term on this. And out here, they outline a number of things that they are eyeballing or tracking for some of those detections. And so it allows the AI to potentially enable swift action. And side note, I do believe at some point in time, AI doctors are better than human doctors, but from a regulatory perspective, you'll still need the human doctor for a judgment call. I haven't used this directly as far as contributing biometric data, but they're saying that they ensure that the voice data remains secure, unalterable, and fully traceable. So I'm going to need to spend a little more time based on just to like research or tech. I want to know how they're anonymizing the data. So you have like proof of person without compromising your identity, but very interesting on that one. Again, for me, I'll kind of outline some of the other reasons I'm investing in this one, but this is the first project that they got. Let me kind of pull up some of their other projects here. They are also looking at psychedelic speech profile for non-invasive mood and cognition monitoring based on microdosing research, aka give them some hallucinogens and try to figure out how it impacts some of your biomarkers relative to speech, mood, creativity, and the like. We know that different hallucinogens actually have helped out folks with things like chronic pain, PTSD, depression, and like based on temporary suspension to, let's say, some aspect of rewiring the human brain in a more therapeutic and healing way. Certainly, I think people have seen on YouTube and like people who go and just blast their skulls out with ayahuasca. I'm not saying go do that, but it is interesting to look at some of the psychological studies and physiological changes under MRI for people who are dosing things. So what if they could do it based on your voice, again, in a very non-invasive way? Pretty cool on some of that stuff. Let me hop back over this one. And also an adverse reaction monitoring system, which doesn't appear to be live yet. So the A+ Voice one is the one they just recently launched on that front. And so let's see here. Here's just a quick flow chart on some of the ways that they're monetizing really their product and services so people can feed into that. Researchers will be able to utilize some of the insights. So basically, it is really part one, they have to have some tech to it. Number two is making it a productized service or commercialized data set. So, hey, I want to run some analytics. I want to compare my data set to Boogie's data set and say, based on these parameters, what are the odds that this person is developing a condition? Yes or no. Also, as more people contribute the data, they have a larger data set to pool against and get into more specificity. So maybe I'm Filipino and I am totally immune to this, or maybe I am Mexican and very susceptible, or maybe I am half Korean and I have no known weaknesses. So anyway, along that front here, there's the AXGT token details. You can take a look at some of the tokenomics. This is slightly out of date. You do need to eyeball some of the comments, and really in their Telegram is where they are most up to date. It is available on Ethereum, Arbitrum, and Base. On that particular front, they recently completed an updated audit. One of the ones I do want to call out here on the audit is they had one that was identified as a major vulnerability in the audit, but it's not really the case when you actually read the notes. Let me make sure I got the right section here. It's relative to centralized risk, and this is due to how they have certain tokens and certain wallets. Long story short here is they're moving everything to multi-sig to really mitigate certain circumstances and mitigate the possibility of a breach causing a long-term super dump on people. One of the things, if you hop over to Dex Screener, again, you can see they've got liquidity in these 3 different spots. The majority of the liquidity is on Ethereum, but there is some available on Base and Arbitrum. One of the things I would advise watching for is we'll see if more arbitrage bots catch up to this. This market cap of 26.9 mil, that is, as far as my research has been able to prove to me, that's really closer to the true market cap. This number up here does not seem to distinguish between the fully diluted value and the market cap, so I don't believe this actual market cap is right. If you actually look at the circulating supply, it is about 26 to 27 mil at any point in time. The other night, there was roughly a 10% arbitrage opportunity pre-slippage and pre-bridge fees. I think when I eyeballed it after bridge fees, it was like around 7% and some change. For my initial positions, it didn't really make sense for me to try to arbitrage, but if you're looking at maybe being a bigger player, might be worth it. So it's around 15 cents right now. As far as the total supply on this one, let me see if I can find something. Let's go with AXGT. Circulating supply will be approximately 1 billion. So there's around 171.44 million for circulating today. As far as, let me just pull up my notes here and make sure I'm giving everyone here the most correct information or most up-to-date information. Again, I would eyeball their Telegram page on that one, as they have a lot of good conversation going on in there about how the supply is impacted. In the case of the supply, they have hard-coded fee splits relative to the contract to reduce the chances of bots taking advantage of certain liquidity pool swap functions. So when they snag fees from some of the transactions, 1/3 goes back to the admin pool, 1/3 goes into the actual funding pool for the science heart of it, and 1/3 of it goes back to the LP to keep that liquidity deep. Roughly speaking, based on the quick math that Dr. Evil broke down in there, who I believe is one of the project team members, or certainly at least a community member on there, is there's only around a 2 million AXGT supply that potentially max gets released every month. So it's like 1% at most, so pretty low inflationary supply. Based on the overall trend and volume transactions and the way that kicks back to the LP, it's projected to be about an 11-year total supply unlock with reducing supply shock over time. So I think it's got a fair amount of pumpamentals on that. I have seen some outrageous call. I am going to do a little bit of moon math and hopium on this. I have seen some outrageous calls for like $117 before end of market. Well, it seems outrageous now, right? From 15 cents. Let's see. So if it's around 15 cents, let me pull up a quick calculator over here. And let's see. Let's just hypothetically say that number is relatively good. It's a lot, 780x on the position, which I'm in it for a few hundred this week, right? So 780X, if you throw $500 in, that's like $390,000 at peak. I'd say worth a scratcher. I wanted some like RWA and decentralized science type stuff. And to be fair, it may entirely be one cycle too early for some of this stuff. But hey, why did I like the overall look of it? It is a newer chart, newer token, right? So February 13th on this one. So cycle 1 token. It's down about 80% from the high on it, probably a little more right now. It's been kind of fluctuating over here on the daily, but when I eyeball it, was down around 85%. Limited supply shock possibility, emerging narrative sector on that one. So I said, hey, a few $100, especially having caught GigaChad at a really good valuation market cap of around 14 to 15 mil on Giga, with this floating at around, again, let me pull this up, AXGT. With this floating at around like a 27 mil market cap, it's definitely got some run room on it for this cycle. So again, the ticker here is AXGT. It's AXNDAO, decentralized science. They've launched their first project. I encourage everyone to take a look at it. Not financial advice. I have taken a position. If it does even even if it's like half of what they're talking, that's still what? Like what? 390x on your dollars. So I'm going to keep my eyes peeled on that one. I did take in my initial position for several $100s based on what I'm planning on allocating to it. And I will be looking to DCA into that one. I'm also looking for some other decentralized science and like RWA type projects. This one I liked because it was an intersection of AI, healthcare, blockchain, RWA, and decentralized science. So for me, it checked off a lot of boxes. Again, it might be just like a little too fringe case and potentially a cycle too early. I encourage you to look at it for yourself. Let me throw the ticker in chat. Cool. All right, let's see what we got going on here in chat. Hey, what's going on, Karn? Good to see you. Yeah, super exciting weekend for crypto, man. That Bitcoin conference was banging. We also had Illuvium launch this week. Senator Loomis expanding on the Bitcoin conference with the proposed bill for a strategic reserve. Yeah, it's a big one. And Boogie saying he's going to buy some more of this token, talking about AXGT. So yeah, again, I at this point in time, I feel good with my main bags. What I'm actually doing is looking for things that are under 100 mil market cap that I think have got some legs to run based on overall tokenomics, based on potential narratives of some things, because they're probably, if they run, that's where I expect to make mad gains. And so something not being in the top 10 to going in the top 10, maybe 3 to 5x, maybe a 10x. And certainly there can be some incredible outliers on that one. Let's see here. We've got Art Suave, Render, Near, and Fetch were initially a cycle too early. And let me acknowledge Moonpill. All the top players are showing up tonight. Yeah, man. I guess it's, Twinkie streams are a scarce resource, I suspect, aside from Sunday nights or, whenever I'm on with Boogie over on his channel. So along those lines, yeah, one of the things I've come to appreciate over the last several years operating in the crypto space, man, being early is just as fatal. Like being too early is just as fatal as being too late, right? So we're definitely looking for the Goldilocks zone and trying to catch some of this stuff. One of the things I am wondering, especially, I can't wait till Monday morning to see like when TradFi opens up and see them maybe throw their hat in the game further. Coming off of this weekend's conference would be, does Bitcoin continue to outperform relative to the rest of the market? I think there's a really strong argument that the move thus far, not saying it's going to be this way to the end of the cycle, but thus far, I should have been more heavily in Bitcoin thus far in the cycle. I should have been more heavily in what I thought would be top flight meme tokens. So, kind of like that barbell portfolio. And yeah, it would be really interesting. I'm not dissatisfied with my portfolio's performance. Certainly, I've got some things staked out. Side note, if you are staking certain things, just be really careful about long-term stakes and long-term lockups of that variety, especially on like the Polkadot type stuff where it's like 28 days to unbond it. I'm not necessarily locking anything up further for things like Illuvium pools and staking if there are any really lengthy duration type stuff. Something like, Boo or PulseX where I can be in and out, yeah, no problem. Anything that's like an extended, 28-day plus unlock, I'm not really adding anything new to those pools. So food for thought on that one. Anyway, I just wanted to hop on, talk a little bit about today's Bitcoin conference, present to you Axton DAO. Shout out to the guys over on the Illuvium team. I know Kieran's been really involved with the Moon Gang and has graciously had some conversations with Charlie, Miguel, and some of the crypto mindset courses. I'm going to take a short break over here. I'll fire up a second stream here in a little bit and stream some Illuvium so people can see it from like what it looks like from the very first boot up to the actual getting it in game and kind of getting underway. And my man Art over here, Leon versus Bilal. Man, I got to go with I'm going to go with Bilal on this one. Yeah, that's just my gut on that one. We'll see if I'm proven wrong. Yeah, so cool. I appreciate everyone tuning in on this one. Hopefully you got some value on that. And I'll be back here probably 15, 20 minutes. I'll fire up a separate stream and stream some Illuvium. So you can catch me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, back on any of those channels very shortly. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Catch y'all in a bit.